Quick introduction. My name is Danica Rhines. I'm the communications director here at CA. Got a few more folks coming in, so I apologize if I get a little distracted letting folks in. But again, we cannot say thank you enough for coming out here today. We usually do this in person, of course, but this is a little bit of a different scenario, as we're all aware. And so we're going to try to keep this as casual and low-key as possible. Typically, when we do this in person, it's show up when you can and, just ask your questions at will. But clearly, we have to have a little more structure, so we're not just talking over one another today, and I'll go over that in just a moment. It'll probably look very familiar to any other meeting you guys have gone to. Again, if you at any point feel like your question has not been fully answered, you can absolutely reach out to me. My email's there, and it'll be up at the end of our session as well. I'm going to ask everybody, and this hopefully is obvious, but hopefully we're all here for the same reasons, and that is to either present some information or learn some information about joining CA's board of directors. Now, we will be trying to keep the questions focused on that. If we get a little off track, that's fine. We can scurry back, but there may be some questions that come up today that maybe are not appropriate for this topic and venue. And of course, we want to keep this focused, and we want to make sure that we respect everybody's time here. So we're going to keep the conversation on track as much as possible, and please be civil. You will be asked to leave if for some reason your comments become inappropriate. So please, let's continue that civility standard. So we have a packet link in the chat. If you want to open the chat, and if you have not already seen it, it was linked up in a couple of places on our website, but you'll see that I posted a PDF that's accessible on our website. I would recommend that you kind of follow along with that if you haven't taken a look already. It's just a good overview of what CA encompasses, and also what the board may encounter here as far as, things to take into consideration. So if you are looking at that for the first time, absolutely no problem. Go ahead and look it up. Oh, thank you, Jess. I will make sure to post it again here, just in case some of you cannot see it. There we are. Again, if you want to pull that up, not a problem. And if you're reviewing that while some folks are asking their questions, of course, do so, and just be respectful to everybody else. So real quick, I want to go around with who is here from CA. We have our president and CEO, Milton W. Matthews, our board chair, current board chair, I should say, Andy Stack. We have our CFO, who is Susan Krabbe, and our legal counsel, who is Sheri Fanaroff, as well as myself, and then my partner in crime, Sam Kasura, who will be doing some of the tech stuff today, just to make sure everything is working smoothly. So I want to start, I want to hand it over to Milton super quickly to make sure he welcomes everyone here and gives us a little bit of an overview of what, hopefully we'll be covering today. Milton?
Okay, I think everyone can hear me. Also, just to add to the list that Danica mentioned, we also have Lynn Locke, who's is the village manager in Town Center, and he's representing our 10 village community associations. So any questions also are that involving the villages, because they're an integral part of the Columbia community also. I just want to be quick. I'm very impressive. I'm very impressed. We have done in person these information sessions for 3-5 years, almost as long as I've been here, and we've gotten individuals' interests. It varied, but I guess it's just the world we're in. I'm very impressed with the number that we have today, and we're talking about not only just possibility or prospect for the CA board and the 7 seats, but also we had elections in the village associations, and also CA has 12 advisory committees. And so if you're looking to start somewhere, if not the board, there's always a starting point to get involved in the community, because it really, my point of view, the community needs you to get involved. Also, Columbia Association as an organization, in December, we celebrated our 55th birthday, and we've been around for a long time, being such an integral part of the Columbia community and Greater Howard County. And I've said this and I've shared this with our board before and our senior staff. It's my thinking, but I really believe that it was intentional decision on the part of the Rouse Corporation to actually create that corporation, that support system, that being the Columbia Association, roughly in 1965, because the community was not officially founded until 1967. So all that logic and advanced thinking went in place from Mr. Rouse and others in the corporation. They created the Columbia Association because they knew with this new community, you were going to need a strong support system. And for me, that's what I believe that Columbia Association has been over the past 55 years, along with all of our community partners, Howard County government, the community college, the hospital, the school system. It's been an excellent run for this community. But all of us know we can't rest our laurels on the past 55 years. We have a reputation that's international, but the world is changing and the country is changing. And we got hit broadside big time with the pandemic going back roughly 1 year. And the organization is strong, and we have taken I guess if you're a hockey fan, we've taken our checks, but we've stayed up and we made adjustments. And going forward, the biggest thing for me is that we don't forget our lessons learned. We're a different organization. We're a different organization as we were starting mid-March 2020. This is roughly a 1 year later. We're a different organization, but we're still serving the community and looking forward. And we're going to get past this pandemic. It's just that what is that organization we're going to be going forward? And so I was unscripted, and so I wanted to be brief, and so let's move on.
All right, Milton, thank you so much. Lynn, I am so sorry. I apparently need another cup of coffee. I am so sorry to leave you out of the introductions there.
Oh, that's okay. Not a problem.
We appreciate you taking your time to be with us this morning. And, I wanted to hand it over real quickly to Andy Stack, the current chair of the board, to kind of give an overview of his perspective of this process real quick and what that looks like and his just kind of outlook on things. Andy?
Thanks, Danica. I want to also welcome all of you and thank you very much. This is a great turnout. Really, really impressed. I've done this, as Milton said, for a number of years, and this is fabulous. Wow. Board of directors, all nonprofit organizations have a board of directors. And, it's a basic function of the board of directors: approve policy, approve the budget, address community issues, set strategic direction. So as one of our board members said, the board operates kind of like at the 1,000-foot level. It doesn't get involved in the day-to-day operations. That's why we have staff. We hire a president hires staff, so it's more at the upper level. And I think that's important for people to know. Danica talked about the challenges. Well, there are three big challenges that I can see coming up in the next year. And the first one is recovering from the pandemic recession. Let's face it, it hit us really bad. But as Milton said, we survived. We made it through. But now we got to recover. And the effects of the pandemic and the recession are going to be with us for a number of years. So that is one of the biggest challenges the board of directors is going to face next year and probably next 2 years, hopefully just 2 years. But it's how do we address, our community has come to expect a certain level of services, a certain type of services. But when your income gets cut 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, it's really tough. And it's just, you have to make hard decisions. And so the thought is we've got through the first part of it and now we need to rebuild, but it's going to take time. The second challenge is actually coming from the county. They're going through a general plan update, which is the precursor to changing the zoning regulations. And this is going to have a huge impact on Columbia. For 55 years, we have always had one type of zoning in Columbia called Newtown zoning. And all the indications are that will be changing within the next several years. And frankly, this is a once in a lifetime change. I mean, think about this. For 55 years, we have had the same zoning. And so this presents a real challenge to the community. The board of directors is very aware of it. And what they've been doing is trying to plan and figure out how we can make sure that any changes stay with the structure and the values of Columbia. So that's going to be a challenge. We have to participate in the general plan update. We have to make sure that it meets our needs because we know that it's going to set the stage for the actual rezoning coming up following the general plan. And then the third challenge, Milton, after 7 years, has decided to leave us. He, 7 years as president's kind of a long time, and he'd like to pursue some other things. So we will be hiring a new president. And so that is going to be the third challenge for the board of directors. We will have a new president, and we need to work with whoever the new president is. So I'll turn it back to Danica. And once again, thank you all for coming out today, this morning.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, echo the thank you there from Andy. Thanks, Andy, for that kind of overview. Now we're going to move into the bulk of the morning, and that is your questions. So, sorry about that. So here's how, and I'm sure most of you have done this, you know the drill, but please mute your mic while you are not speaking. Go ahead and post your name in the chat if you have a specific question. We will kind of move down the line as people, quote unquote, raise their hand. That's probably the best way to do it in this Google format. I know other formats have an actual raise hand function, but if you could put your name in the chat, could be just your first name, and we'll just kind of go down the line, first come, first serve, and then unmute. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that means your name and perhaps your village, perhaps if this is your first time considering this, whatever other information you would like to give, and then ask away. And our panelists will just on the fly determine who maybe is the best suited to answer your inquiries. So if we have anybody who is brave enough to go first, by all means, throw your name in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Marlon. We'll start with you then. Go ahead and unmute, sir.
All right, there we are. Yeah, I'm with the village of Dorsey Search. My family and I, we moved here approximately 3.5 years ago. So I'm new to the community, and the only way I found out about the board was through a friend. So I didn't even know they had elections. So this is new to me. So I'm willing to run for Dorsey Search.
Excellent. Marlon, did you have any questions about the process or perhaps the role of the board in our organization?
Well, I was going to read through the slides that you sent out first before, and I'll listen in.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Marlon, if I could just add as village manager, I actually represent one of the smallest villages. I'm in town center. So our population in town center is about 6,000. In Long Reach, it's about 15,000. So the broad diversity of the 10 villages covers about from 6,000 population up to 15,000. And your voice in your community is very important as a board member at the local village level, because you're speaking for about 6,000 to 10,000 people in your community. And then when you get up to the Columbia Association board, you're speaking on behalf of 100,000 people. So we appreciate everyone's voices, and we're very happy that you're considering running. So thank you, Marlon.
Thank you so much.
All right. I think it's Trala. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep, that's correct. Trala Downer. Much like Marlon, I wasn't aware of the elections coming up until a friend of mine mentioned it to me. I am living in the Oakland Mills Village Center. Sorry, I'm actually outside of the office and can't go on video at this location. But I've been in Columbia since '95, and recently getting engaged in service and community activities over the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years. So I definitely want to make sure that I have a part in, how this community grows and thrives, since I have been here so long and plan to stay here.
That's wonderful. And thank you again for being willing to put yourself out there. I wonder if, Andy, you could maybe shed some light on the process of the election itself, because, and Jess, maybe you can follow up too. That would be great. We've got a couple of, and Dick as well, I see you on here. I think a lot of people, when we hear the word election, it can be a really daunting word when we're talking about a board. Oh my gosh, do I need a campaign? Do I need to do this, that, and the other? Could you three maybe just provide your experience with running for the board, the election process? And I know each village does it a little differently, but that would be great. Andy, why don't you start?
Okay. First off, what I want to say is CA's fiscal year and the villages runs from 1 May to 30 April. It's a very unusual fiscal year. Normal fiscal years, start at the beginning of the year or in July or something, but CA goes 1 May to 30 April. And that actually determines the election schedule. So from the villages, because the new fiscal year is going to start 1 May, elections occur in the month of April, which once again is a very odd cycle. But it's been that way for almost 50 years, and we've just kind of gotten used to it. This is the Columbia way. Elections are in April. Each village, and there are 10 of them, run its own election. They have a set of rules. The rules can differ from village to village because they're all unique. But generally, they all require a candidate to file a petition, a certain number of signatures. You certainly can campaign. Sometimes people actually, in the past, have gone door to door. Sometimes they just do flyers. Now, of course, it's more social media too. So, yes, certainly encourage you to campaign. I've run a number of times, both for village board. I was on the village board in Owen Brown before I got elected to the CA Board of Directors. And so I would say you just kind of work at it, let people know who you are. It's good to sometimes go to a village board meeting to kind of see what the local issues are. And you can always watch our meetings and work sessions. They're all taped. They're on the YouTube, and Danica can tell you exactly where, because I'm not that familiar with all of the setup. But I encourage you to kind of watch and see and kind of get involved in what the local issues are. Jess, Dick, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add something. So for those of you who don't know me, so I'm the newbie on the CA board this year. This is my first term, but I also served 1 or 2 years on my village board before I came here. And I actually was a village manager for 5 years, which is the job that Lynn has. So, and I can tell you I have worked and lived in at least 3 different villages, and each one is unique. As Andy stated, every village has their own election rules. Elections always happen typically on the same day. Last year was a little weird because of the pandemic, but April 24th is generally election day. And I would say generally it's going to vary a little bit, but the candidate filing deadline is usually in mid-March. For Hickory Ridge this year, it's March 12th, I believe. So that's sort of generally the deadline you want to be aware of. If you are interested in running, you do need to contact your village office, go to their website, find out what the rules are, find out what the requirements are, and get involved that way. And I would say, obviously, from the number of people on this call, not everyone could run and win a seat on the CA board this year. I would strongly encourage those of you who are in attendance to consider running for village board. It is a great way to learn about the unique way that Columbia works, and to get, a different perspective on how the relationship between the villages and Columbia work. And it's just a great way to get started. The other thing I will be completely transparent about is being on the CA board is a heavy lift. It is a lot of meetings. It is a lot of homework. You want to make sure that you have the time and energy to commit to it. So if you are already one of those people who feels very overcommitted, start at the village board level. That's a much lighter lift, and it's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door and understand, and then you'll have a better understanding of how intense being on the CA board can be. So that's my 2 cents.
I think Andy and Jess have really covered that pretty well. A couple of points, though. CA is a very complex organization, and it can be kind of confusing because what we're really running for in this coming election is not the board of directors, but the Columbia Council. And this is because of some strange thing in our bylaws. It goes back 50 years, who knows? But what happens is you'll run for the council, and then the council elects the board of directors, which will be the council members. So you want to don't be confused by what you're running for. I'm the Dorsey Search. I've been on the board for 6 years. I joined because I was pretty passionate about one particular issue. And after 6 years, I'm starting to see some progress on it. So this is not an easy slam dunk, as Jess said. There's not only the 2 meetings a month, but you have to prepare for those meetings. We have closed meetings where we discuss things like legal issues and personnel and contracts and things like that also have to be prepared for. You will also be attending, if you're good at this, you'll be attending your village board meeting every month, because you really want to be in touch with what the village issues are. And there are other things. The county quite often has hearings that affect what we do at Columbia Association. And I like to drop in on those and maybe say something if I have to. So I'm retired. Andy's retired. So we have all the time in the world to do this. Well, I don't either, Andy. But anyway, it is, as Jess said, a heavy lift. And Marla, it looks like we might be competing against one another. I know there's an opening on the village board, which might be an interesting place to start, particularly if you're new in the community. But whatever, welcome to the circus. It should be fun. Looking forward to meeting you and talking with you, and maybe I can answer any questions you have.
Milton, go ahead.
Yes, I want to quickly add that, yes, I agree with the board members who have spoken that CA, it's a heavy lift, but it's a manageable lift. We have worked over the years, and we're still a work in progress to make sure all of our board members we acknowledge they're volunteers. And their times are precious, and our board meetings are in the evening. So we have made a lot of changes where we're kind of compressed the time. We're down to a work session once a month and a board meeting. The other, we try to keep it to 2 meetings. So it is a heavy lift, and it depends on what's on our agenda. Right now, we've had a pandemic. We're going through a draft of the FY22 budget. So there's a lot on our plate. This is, as in your personal and your professional lives, this is a very atypical year. And so we need to factor that into it also.
Great, Milton. Thank you for that. Annika or Anika?
I had a friend in high school or elementary school who was Annika, and I was Anika, so we had
There
fun
you
with
go.
that in
Well, I'm
class.
Danica. I get called Danica all the time, so I understand.
No worries. Thank you guys for having this morning. I've lived here for now 16 years. I'm from Iowa originally, and so there were a lot of things that I did not know even existed in Columbia. So I feel like Columbia is in a shroud of mystery, and there's like a key somewhere that we don't know. So I appreciate having this meeting. One question or a couple questions, not long ones. I think it was it was Andy that mentioned the terms. The signatures that you have to receive when you are running for a village board. Is that vary by the village, or is there a number? It does vary by the village. Okay, I see all the shaking of the heads. Got it. So we can look that up and find out what that looks like. The second question that I have when it comes to the terms, are they different also by villages? I love Columbia. So I know we've been doing things for 50 years, but we can change them. So, okay, got it. And then the last thing, Dick was trying to be transparent and then I got confused. So it's not your fault, Dick, it's mine. But council versus board, I got lost on when you were mentioning the council that was then running for the board. Can you kind of re-explain that to me so I can understand it?
Yeah, I am sorry. I probably should have been clearer there. As I said, it's all complex. And you mentioned signatures earlier. Usually you have to get a petition, 10 signatures to run. Each village runs its own election. Each village has its own charter. And so that's why there's a lot of confusion. That's why some terms are 1 year, some terms are 2 years. But the way it's set up is we have a group called the Columbia Council, and it's kind of a legal thing that we do. And maybe Sheri can explain why. I've been on the board 6 years. I've never figured it out. But the villages elect a Columbia Council. And then the council meets, well, not with COVID, but up, at headquarters, and elects itself the board of directors. So it's just a strange legal quirk that we have. And I just don't want you to be confused by it, because if you choose to run for the CA board, you run for the Columbia Council, and then you select yourself to be on the board.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Sheri and Milton can shed some light on that.
Hi there, I'm Sheri Fanaroff. I'm CA's general counsel. The way it works, because of the way our documents are structured, is that the position that you actually run for is Columbia Council representative. And there's one of those from each village. Those 10 Columbia Council representatives are then what's called the members of the Columbia Association, because Columbia Association is a non-stock corporation. It has members instead of stockholders. So the 10 Columbia Council representatives become the members. And then our documents require that those 10 members elect themselves as the board of directors. And that is how you go from being a Columbia Council representative to a member of the board of directors. It's a little arcane, but that's how it works.
And the Columbia Council only meets once a year, and that's to elect themselves.
And a point that I would like to add is that, yes, all the Columbia Association Board of Directors come from the 10 villages, but they represent the entire community. There's a in your packet, there's information, and one of the things is a map. And all of the areas of the Columbia Association within the boundaries of the Columbia Association, roughly 32 square miles, it's not within a village. And so that's why, as a president and CEO, for me, it's been very important to emphasize that, yes, our board of directors come right now from a village, but all of Columbia is not within a village. So the board of directors really represent the entire community.
So what I'd like to also add is it is really, really important to look at the village you live in for their particular rules. The way Jim Rouse set this whole organization up is it is the villages that control the elections. They set the rules. They set the date. CA has no role at all. CA does not run any elections. So each village has the ability to do it differently. And you can kind of see a number of years ago, all of the terms were 1-year terms. And CA went back to the villages and asked that this was causing some difficulty with massive turnovers, and said, can you go to 2-year terms? In particular, can you go to staggered 2-year terms? 7 of the villages agreed, and they changed their rules to allow the 2-year terms. 3 of them declined. That's their choice. And so we have this situation where 7 of us on the board have 2-year terms, and 3 have 1-year terms. And it's, once again, it's just like, well, this is Columbia. we want to be a little different. But we can, that we can always look at that and always change. But it really, really is important to go back and look at the particular village because they set the rules for the elections.
Mm-hmm. And if I could just add a couple of comments onto that representing the villages, all of us within the village network of 10 have our own board of directors, and it could range from 5 up to 9 or 10 people. And for example, in Town Center, we opened our nomination process here about a day or 2 ago. So our nomination process runs from February 19th until March the 12th at noon. And most of the villages run their final nomination acceptance period up until what Jess said earlier, which is around March the 12th. Most, if not all, the villages have their election packet on their websites. So you can go to the website, download the application packet. Some of them do require about 150-word statement as to why you want to run for the village board and for the Columbia Association rep. So I encourage all of you to go to your individual villages, look up the information. Every village over the last 3 or 4 weeks has put it in their weekly newsletter. We've also put it out in printed newsletters. So we want to get everyone involved, and the more the merrier, and the more voices we have and the more people running, the better Columbia will be, the better villages will be, and the better Columbia Association will be.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. And Nika, I've been working to compile this information, but as you can tell, it's a little complex and very varied, if you will. So CA will hopefully have kind of a more comprehensive document somewhere or post somewhere with all this information. But I'm going to stress this again at the end of this session, but the best thing you can do is be in touch with your local village where you live and the manager, especially if you're interested in running for any of the positions. They are going to know backwards and forwards what you need to do in order to have your candidacy, paperwork in line and things like that. So that's probably the easiest way to go about it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Just having the information helps, if I'm not running for anything, but if I know someone that should, I'd be able to give them that info. So I really appreciate it this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I should mention, if by some chance one of you out there actually does not know which village you are in, that does occasionally happen. Please feel free to contact us, and we can tell you what village your residence is located in.
It's a great point, Sheri. Thank you. Nobody has signed up for questions here. Anybody have another question? I know there's probably a lot floating out there right now, but.
Danica, let me just say a few words about, I'll say, the administrative stuff for the board.
Of course.
As Milton alluded. So 9 months of the year, we meet the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month. The first meeting is a work session where we get to basically discuss the issues. And then the second meeting is a voting meeting. In November and December, because of the holidays, we only meet once. And generally we try not to meet at all in August to kind of give both the board and the staff some good rest time. So those are the kind of meetings you're looking for. They're open. We broadcast them, stream them on the internet, and also record them, and you can watch them at your leisure. About 7 days before each meeting, we will post our agenda online, and we will also post a packet of background information so that not only the board members, but also the public can see what we're going to discuss and the background. And so you can find that on our CA website, and Danica can give you the location, the website address, and things like that. But that's a great resource. You get to see what type of issues we discuss, and you also get to see the background that has been prepared by staff or other people. And the reason we do it 6 days in advance is to let the board members in particular know what's coming up and think about the stuff, and also to give the public an option to look at it and then come and speak at our meetings or email us or things like that. And we do have a resident speak out at all of our open meetings. We set aside time for people to come. And you can always email us. That's a great way. We get lots of emails. There's like a board alias, so you can hit all 10 of us at once, all 11 of us. Because I should mention that there are 10 voting members, one from each of the village, but our president is also a member of the board of directors, but the president doesn't get to vote. So we actually have an 11-member board of directors with 10 voting members. Just some administrative type stuff.
Milton, I think you'd be the best suited to answer this question. We got kind of a follow-up about the new town zoning and kind of what that entails. What exactly is that? Do you have kind of an overview explanation of that, what is likely very complex plan?
Also, please, any of the other, Andy is I say is an expert, but Andy knows this inside and out, and Jess and Dick. But Newtown zoning is one of the unique features. There's a lot of unique features that make Columbia, the Columbia community. It's a plan master community. Goes back to the 1960s. And usually a lot of areas outside of the boundaries of the Columbia Association, you can call it traditional zoning or Euclidean zoning, where you have businesses, residents, industrial and commercial. Columbia so much doesn't have that when it comes to this new down zoning. It's almost like I came to Columbia from Reston, Virginia, which is a master plan community also. We used to refer to it as that, as opposed to designating residential, whatever, you have this blog. And so, Andy, I'll let you take it from there, because it can get very technical, because there's site development plans, there are concept development plans, but Andy, don't get too technical.
No, I am not going to get too technical. Milton gave you the basics. I mean, zoning is what you can and cannot build on a piece of land. I mean, that governs, those are the rules that govern. And so when Mr. Rouse first started Columbia, which is back in 1967, he and the county government at the time came up with a new type of zoning which allowed for a master plan type community. And it just happened to call it Newtown zoning. Newtown, yeah. And that's just been in place for 50 years. And what has happened is we got developed. Pretty much Columbia is almost all developed, and everything now is redevelopment. And so the thought is a zoning category that worked for when there was nothing here and the whole place was being planned may not work as well for redevelopment. And so the thought is we need to now kind of move from we're building the city of Columbia to we're redeveloping different parts of it. And so that's the idea behind possibly changes to the zoning. It's important because it tells you what you can and cannot build on the land. And the very fact of what Columbia looks like physically really depends a huge amount on Newtown zoning. I mean, we have 4,000 acres of open space because the zoning regulations said a third of the land had to be put aside for open space. That's exactly why we have it. And those are the types of things we don't want to lose. We don't want some change to come in and say, oh, you only have to have 25%. Well, I mean, if the community wants that, okay, but I'm not in favor of that. and so that's why we, from the Columbia Association point of view, are paying very close attention to that because it has so much an effect. And as Milton said, the rules governing how you go about doing Newtown zoning and that are very complex, but you don't have to worry about those until you get elected to the board of directors. We have a really good planning staff, a planning Department of Community Planning that really follows everything.
Can I add to that? Usually when a town develops, it develops a piece here, piece there. Every developer gets a little bit of land and they do what they want with it to make the most money. What Rouse did is he went out and he bought 14,000 acres. I think it was 14,000. And it's now more than that. I think it's 17,000 now. And planned the whole thing. So it just wasn't scattered this and that. And that's why Columbia looks like Columbia. I mean, we have a beautiful town because you can't just put a gas station wherever you want. You have to follow certain rules. And you'll notice, for example, in the parts of Columbia that are part of the original Rouse plan, there are no driveways that go out into main highways. There are all kinds of other rules that make us special. We don't have strip malls. Now, there are out parcels, pieces that Rouse did not buy, and that's also where a lot of this development is taking place, and a lot of it's uncontrolled. And we have values. We live in this beautiful community because it was planned. And we are worried very much about what will happen with the general plan. Are they going to respect those values or not? So this is a critical issue, and it's one that I think most of the board members feel pretty passionately about.
Milton, did you have anything to add before the next question?
Well, Dick touched on some of it. And also the biggest thing why, as we look forward to the next 50 plus years in Columbia and Greater Howard County, Newtown zoning was very effective going back to the 60s because, as Dick said, Mr. Rouse bought 14,200 plus acres, and you basically could lay out a community. The next step in the evolution of Columbia and Greater Howard County is redevelopment. And redevelopment, wherever you are, is much more difficult than building on in a greenfield, is the terminology. And so that's why there's going to be a look at what's the next iteration when it comes to land control in the Columbia community and also broader Greater Howard County.
Great, thank you. I want to move on to Brian posted a question. And Brian, I apologize, but I might have to get some clarification from you over video or voice here. So first and foremost, you asked whether or not you have to be a homeowner or resident to run for the board. And then could you clarify your second question about conflicts of interest between the board members and business owners and how that works?
Yeah, I was specifically thinking about if you were a business owner yourself within the community, and then you're making decisions about, planning and stuff, and how do you all deal with those issues? I guess that's what I was trying to get clarification on.
Sure. Milton, would you be the best person to address that?
I'm still, because Brian, when you say if you're a business owner in the community and we're making decisions about planning, because right now the planning effort is at the county level. The county is local government for Columbia and Greater Howard County. CA is part of that effort because we are such a large part of Howard County government, and plus we have this area, this zoning category called Newtown zoning. So when you said a business person making decisions about planning? What are you asking really?
I don't have a specific question. I just can think about, like, as you're forming this new redevelopment plan and you're a business owner within the community, obviously you have interest in something helping your business potentially. And I'm imagining you would just recuse yourself from whatever decision if it was something specifically related to you. But I didn't know if there was something in place, or is it just case by case basis or something like that?
Brian, we have an ethics code. And I think Sheri could probably get into that with you, but there is a conflict of interest section, which is pretty specific about, what you can do and what you can't do, and when you need to recuse yourself. And I think that's on the web. I'm not sure. Danica, would you know whether our ethics code is on the website?
I can certainly fish it out, Sheri.
Actually, yes. So all of our ethics policies are on the website, including the policy that addresses conflict of interest.
Perfect.
But one other point you make, and I don't know whether it's tangential to that, but also, Brian, if you were hypothetically, if a CA board member is a business owner, and there's and as a business owner, you have a property that you want to redevelop or whatever, that doesn't start with CA. That starts at the county level.
And I think that's an important distinction, Brian. It gets really complicated. A lot of people associate Columbia Association with a pseudo government. This is something that I've run into in my short period of time here. But in fact, that is not our role at all. We do not make those decisions, as Milton is alluding to. So I think that might help clear up some of those. We don't make the development decisions. We certainly have voices in that conversation.
Well, we also have covenants that we do administer, and also the villages have covenants that they do administer. So we are kind of involved in that. One of the things that is one of our biggest problems is people don't really understand what the county does and what CA does. And now that Danica's on board, one of her challenges is going to be to help people understand that, because there is a lot of confusion. People have problems with a pothole and they think that's a CA responsibility. That's a county responsibility. So this is part of the complexity of the position, is knowing just, where our authority ends and where the county's begins.
Brian, something else you wanted to clarify?
No, that was good. And sorry, and for the first question, you answered, but I heard it, and you said you have to be a resident or homeowner or resident?
We skipped on over that one. So do we have to be a resident or a homeowner to run for the board? Milton?
It depends on each village.
Right.
Each village has its own rules. Sometimes all you have to do is be a property owner or a resident. You can rent a place or something. Others, if you just live in the village. And so it does vary from village to village.
Yeah. And Jessamine's predecessor lived in a different village than she represented, but owned property in the village that she represented. So it really depends on what the village position is.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if, like, a business owner that doesn't live in an area could be on the board, but not have any other. And that sounds like you could potentially. Okay.
Well, you'd have to be associated with a village. You'd have to be on Columbia assessed property one way or another.
Brian, I think the moral of the story is check with your village. That's going to be the best and most, the easiest way to get some of these answers. And I apologize for not having that all compiled in one place, but because it's so individualized, sometimes it's easier to just go to the individual villages. Thank you so much for your question. I'm going to move on to Philip from King's Contrivance, and what he's asking, I think I can answer probably, just as, I'd love for Milton to chime in as well. He's wondering what steps is CA taking to ensure that the board is more racially and economically diverse, in short, more representative of Columbia's ideals. And something that's really important to understand, and I think this goes with the conversation about the villages really having ownership over the elections, is although CA really does promote any civic participation, whether you want to get involved at a village level, at the CA board level, whether that's casting your vote, whether that's joining a committee for CA, whatever level that you choose to get involved with, we are encouraging of that. We love to see it. However, we are not directly involved in the elections themselves. So we are proponents of the process. We do not get involved with promoting special campaigns or special interests. We don't endorse candidates. We don't we're not involved in any of that. And a lot of that is the way, again, that Mr. Rouse wrote the process for all of this. So that's really important to understand in this conversation about diversity on whatever level we're talking about. Milton and I have spoken a lot about just the breadth of what diversity could mean for this community. And it goes far beyond racial and economic. It goes to gender, it goes to age, and just with the level of involvement that we have in the elections themselves and what happens there, again, we're just here to help people get involved at whatever level that they want to get involved at. And I hope that addresses your question to some degree, Philip. Milton, what would you like to add to that?
Go ahead. Dick looked like I will follow Dick. Go ahead, Dick.
One thing, we have a 5-year strategic plan. And one of the key elements in that is increasing diversity and involvement. When Columbia was founded, everybody was all the pioneers really wanted to take part and be in this thing. And that was part of what made it such a wonderful community. These days, a lot of people move here because of the great schools. They don't really understand Columbia. They're not as involved as they were. And the board has been very concerned about that. And so we established that. And I think Danica can tell you one of the charges she has is to get people more involved, and particularly more ethnic diversity, more economic diversity. We really want people to do that. And the very fact that so many of you are here today is exciting, because this is great. We want to have more people involved. So, and the beauty of Columbia is it is a very diverse community, and that's one of the things that makes it special.
And I would just quickly add that when it comes, number one, we everyone realizes with the Columbia Association Board of Directors, and even at the village level, they're elected. So you can't it's based on what individuals are willing to say, I want to run for this beyond this governing body. For me, CA is a great resource. We're doing more and more efforts of reaching out into the community, reaching out to all components and aspects of our community, all groups in our community, to educate and inform and allow them to make informed decisions. Yes, I've gotten questions about the diversity of my board ever since I've been here, but it's an elected board, and I would love to see the board that we have. It's a board that has members of the community who have stepped up and say, I want to take on this civic this process and get engaged. And for me, as a president and CEO, I just want individuals coming to the board who's informed, who's engaged, who wants to represent the community in all aspects of it.
Very well said, Milton. Just a quick question from Michelle. I think this is going to be a quick one. The reason behind the whole Columbia Council, and I hope people don't get too wrapped up in this process, because it is, speaking from someone I just started in August, it's a little bizarre. I get it and understand that it's tough to kind of to digest. So the reason Columbia Council members vote themselves as directors is to ensure that the board members are chosen by the residents and not appointed by someone else like the president or former council members. And that is the case. This board, the way, again, Rouse has written things for us, this board is an elected board. Am I correct on that, Milton? So that's the reason. I don't know, Michelle, we can't go back in time and read Jim's mind about whether or not it's to give residents more power or not, but I would imagine it's so this board is representative of the community, and the more people that we can have voting too, we're all about that, running and voting. Yeah, and I just want to echo very quickly from a personal, professional standpoint, I just really appreciate everybody coming out and listening to what the conversation that's going on today, and the sheer number of people that are showing even remote interest in these positions, I think is really promising for this election. And as Dick alluded to, one of my big priorities in the coming months is to make sure that people who do want to get involved know how to get involved. And I'm happy to answer any other questions too. Does anybody, oh good, Sabina just posted here. What do folks here think are barriers to getting more representative leadership? And this is quite a large question. I'm sure a lot of organizations have on a really frequent basis. So, I guess I'll let Milton start there, but Milton, if you want to get this rolling.
I'm not going to tell my age, but I've been working in community association management, local government for 40 plus years. And so I don't want anyone to take away that some of the concerns as far as diversity of our governing bodies, that's unique to Columbia. It's not. I've worked in cities the largest, Dallas, Texas. I worked in suburban communities and in the Midwest. It's the same thing. For me, it starts with the person's willingness to want to get involved. You see yourself, I know I have a skill set. I have a passion that I think can add value to this governing body. And as I said, the old saying, all of us grew up, is that if everyone agrees on everything, then there's some redundancy there. And you don't want that on your board of directors. You want individuals with different perspectives, have different insights, and also for me as a president and CEO, forward looking. And so I think it just starts with, number one, it's going to be a time commitment. You have to make sure you can fit that in your schedule. But it's just the desire and the acknowledgement. I have something that I want to give back to this community to make it better, and just step up.
Yeah, I would say our biggest problem is apathy, and when I was on the board of my homeowners association, 130 houses, we had trouble getting quorums at our annual meeting. You would think somebody's house is one of their biggest investments. They'd have a lot of concern about it and would want to be part of that association. But we had to practically draft people to be on the board. So yeah, we have this apathy problem, and we're trying to overcome it. And it looks, from what I see today, that we're working very well on taking care of that.
Lynn, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to add that, we want all board members to be active, whether it's at the village level or the Columbia board level. And in terms of town center, we look at our diversity on the board all the time. And Danica mentioned it earlier. It doesn't necessarily mean racial or economic. It's all types of diversity, age, and so on and so forth. And we had a little bit of a hole in the board where we didn't have younger people represented. So several of our board members literally went out and, as was just mentioned, drafted someone and talked to them over many months to get them to run for the board. So now we have a little bit more of a representation on the younger side of the age spectrum, which we want. So we want diversity of all people, all opinions, all age groups, economics, because we're here in a place where we live, and we want the community to be better at the village level and overall at the Columbia and the county level.
And if I may quickly add a point, you're talking about just gender diversity when it comes to the village boards and CA board, and even on our advisory committees. The CA board task staff several years back, we created a millennial work group, and they were asked to work on special topics. And I think there were about 15 of them, or 15 to 20 of them. They produced an extraordinary extraordinary, well-researched, well-drafted report that we presented to the board. And the board was so impressed, me included, that they became an advisory committee of the board. And now, as Columbia Association, we see that those individuals on that Millennial Advisory Committee, it's a stepping stone to whatever they want to do next, whether it's at the village level, CA level, or who knows, some of them may one day be on the Howard County Council and state delegate. So just that, once again, that passion and that interest and acknowledgement, I have something to give back and I want to share it.
I think that's great. Jess, I want to get to your question. And I actually, if Susan is still around, not to pull somebody else into the conversation, but we haven't heard much from Susan, our CFO. And I think you can speak to this a little bit due to the amount of work that you have put into the budget and things like that. Time commitment wise, and then we'll go to Andy, Dick, and Jess. What are we talking about in terms of a rough estimate of hours spent on board things and realizing that this year is an anomaly, but this year also happened. And so we should be prepared for that if we're thinking about running.
Yeah, so hi everyone. Looking at it from my perspective, this year the staff spent a great deal of time preparing material for the board. So a big part of, you've got the day-to-day, running the organization and keeping the services and programs going and addressing the pandemic and the corresponding or resulting recession. There's a lot going on, but we put a lot of effort and time into additional analysis and material for the board. And so I would bet that if a board member reviewed all of that before each meeting, and we had some extra meetings because of the budget process, it's probably 4 or 5 hours a week for budget stuff to read that material and be ready to be prepared. So in a normal year, I don't know if there'll be, will there be another normal year? I don't know, but I would say it's probably not that much. It's maybe 2 or 3 hours a week during meeting weeks that board would be, and it depends on what what your background is and how familiar you are with the various matters that the board would be addressing.
Andy, thoughts on that?
Let me go after Dick and Jess because I have a unique twist to this. So.
That's true. Jess, why don't you go ahead? Jess.
Yeah, Andy's the chair, so he does a lot more than the rest of us. But and I have the unusual experience of coming in at the beginning of the pandemic. So I admit that this has been an unusual year, but I was on the village board for a couple of years and I hesitated to run for the CA board because I knew from our current CA boards representatives that it was a lot of work. So that's why I made sure that I was ready to commit the time and energy to it. I would say this year, and again, I've prefaced this by saying I'm newer, so I have a little bit of catch up to some of the guys who have been on here for a while. I would say that on a non-meeting week, I spend 3 to 4 hours. On a meeting week, it's more like 8 hours a week on CA business, whether that's attending the meeting, they usually are 2 hours long, reading and preparing for a meeting, talking to staff and asking questions about the materials that I've been given, answering questions from constituents about what's going on, providing information. So I just think it's important. And I'm in a position, I have a very supportive spouse. My kids are teenagers, but I want to be real about the fact that this is not like something that you just do on a whim. Like you got to be ready to really commit your time and energy to this if you really want to represent the people of Columbia well. So I just encourage you to think about that. And like I said, the village board is an excellent way to start if you feel like this might be a little bit more than you want to bite off right now. And it's like wading into the water and taking baby steps, and you get a much better sense of what the job entails from seeing how your peers, because each Columbia Council representative is an ex officio member of their village board. So that's something we haven't mentioned, is that most CA representatives either write a column for their village newsletter, They attend village board meetings, which happen typically twice a month. So you're talking 2 village board meetings, 2 CA board meetings. If we have a closed meeting about a legal matter or a personnel matter, that's an additional meeting. Then you have people emailing you with questions. You have the preparation that you have to do for each meeting so that you can be informed and offer valuable feedback and contribute to the meeting. So just something I want to make sure that everyone has an understanding of, not trying to scare anyone away. The idea is I don't want people to run for CA board and think that this is going to be a walk in the park. You have because you are a servant leader. So that would be my advice to people who are interested.
But it's funny that you used the term walk in the park, because that's one of the things we've been doing with Symphony Woods. We've been up there a couple of times looking to see where the new plan would work. There's a saying that work expands to fill the time available. And you could make this a full-time job if you wanted to. But I would say the bare minimum is pretty much what Jessamine has outlined. You've got to be at the meetings twice a month, and believe me, that August vacation is really well appreciated, although quite often you're doing work then too. And there are special things, but the other thing is you have to be involved in your community. You've got to be out talking to your neighbors. You've got to be writing, just being there and seeing what's broken. And I mean, it's as much as you put into it, really. And at the very minimum, I think it would be 4 or 5 hours a week.
Okay, I mean, the reason I went last is as they alluded, I'm the chair. And there is just a lot of administrative stuff that goes with being chair. I'm the one who has to prep for the meetings, make sure that everything is laid out, that we got it. I do the agendas for closed meetings. I call the closed meetings. I meet with the president. I meet with different board members when they have questions. I meet with staff. So, it just, there's a lot of, I just call it administrative stuff that goes on with the chair. Sometimes I'm called upon to kind of give a presentation or a talk or something just because I'm chair. So I spend a lot more time week from week, but part of that is simply because somebody has to do the stuff that the chair does, and I'm the chair, and so I get to do that. But I think Jess and Dick answered it nicely. But if you do get to be chair, let me tell you, there is extra work to do. I will tell you that right now.
And Andy's just barely scraping the surface there, because he does a lot of work, an awful lot of work just to make sure we have everything coordinated. And he's also he has a little briefcase he carries around. I think he's got every document that's ever been written about CA going back 50 years in there, so you can always pull something out and tell you what the story is on it. So there are varying degrees. It really depends on what you want to put into it.
I also posted, in case anybody's interested, I posted the link to the advisory committees that we have, in case, this does sound a little bit overwhelming of an undertaking right now. And it's something that seems maybe not something that doesn't really fit into your schedule. Well, we still want you to get involved in any way possible. And there are plenty of advisory committees. So if you need that link again, I'm happy to post it once more. Anika had a question for Lynn.
Thank you. So, Lynn, I went out and was looking onto I live in Owen Brown, not far from Lake Elkhorn. And I went onto our, website for the village. And it was like, my question is on, transparency. So I was looking for the information about what's coming up for the elections, et cetera. And then there was a brief statement about the elections, but then I was pointed to have to go to the actual newsletter. And then I had to download the newsletter to get the information about the elections. And then I saw that it said that they send out more information the month before. Is that typical, or do you only get a month of information before? How do the villages, I know they're all different, but being able to get the information out to people, it's like I'm picking up a lot of things and looking underneath them to see if the answer is there.
Right. No, absolutely. What I recommend you do with that village is just send a note to the village manager there, which is right on the website. So ask that specific question. That's a great question. We certainly don't want this process to be complicated. We want it to be as easy as possible. Being 10 separate corporations, each village handles their election a little bit differently, and there's a board of directors and there's an election committee, and each election committee is 2 to 4 people on the election committee. So it's a little bit different, and each village sets those policies out either in newsletters, both printed and electronic. So I would just send a note directly to Owen Brown, the village manager, ask for those specific details, and they will be happy to provide them. Okay. I did want to add to a couple of things that were brought up in the chat regarding bylaws. So since we are separate corporations, we have our own bylaws. The board of directors votes on those bylaws. The board of directors can amend any bylaws by a vote of the board. So the board is elected. There is a charter. There are bylaws. They're all different for each of the associations, but the board and the village actually votes to make changes or adjustments to bylaws.
And I'll add a little bit to that, Anika, because I think I can speak to, in my attempt to congregate all of the information in one place for elections, a lot of the boards, the village boards, are looking at ways to ensure that these upcoming elections are safe for everyone. And they're still in the process of keeping an eye on COVID restrictions, COVID guidelines, and are trying to make their best decisions as close to the day as possible, which I know sounds counterintuitive to something that we should be getting the word out about, but they want to make sure the options there that are safe. So I know that that is a factor in this election that maybe hasn't been in the past. So something to keep in mind. But,
what I was looking at on the actual page is that then when you go to the newsletter says that in order for you to put your name in the hat and all those things, then you have to physically go someplace to do it. So it just seems like barrier to barrier. That's not COVID safe per se, right? To have to go do that. So that's why I was just asking if there was a general practice. So thank you for that.
Right. So I completely agree with your comments. In terms of Town Center, you just go to the website, you download the application, you fill it out, you write your 150 words, and you send it in to me. And then I present it to the election chair committee, and they review all the nominations that come in for the election period. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. And that's a very good point regarding Owen Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sabina had a question about remote participation, and maybe Andy or Milton or a combination of folks can help shed some light on that. Since right now we're having everything virtual, clearly remote participation is a thing. But once we're in a world, once again, hopefully soon, where we can gather together in person, have we had any discussions on the board level of having remote participation be an option?
Actually, no, not yet. So before COVID hit, all our meetings were in person. Although you could participate by phone, we did allow that capability. We have a board of directors room in headquarters, CA headquarters building, with a lot of IT built into it, so we can do presentations and resident speak outs and recording, and then we moved next to streaming, so we could stream from that room and things like that. COVID hit. It took us a while to adopt to a virtual setup. And frankly, it'll be up probably to the next board to decide how they want to proceed from that point on. I have a feeling some of our board members like the virtual option. Some want to meet in person. And so who knows, we might be at a hybrid. But that's really going to be a point of discussion for the next board, because each board does kind of get to set that type of thing. So this is our first real experience with the virtual world, and we'll see what the next board decides.
And for me, looking at the bigger picture and long term, a lot of the things that we have done in our personal lives and our professional lives to adapt to the pandemic, there are some features or some of them we want to hold on to. As far as technology, we've done things to adapt to this that's going to stay in place. And it's just, as Andy said, it's going to be an option whether you want to continue with it in different forms or hybrid. But yes, we have put the technology into place to continue. I'm a big believer. There are times when that in-person is necessary, but other times, especially if we have a board member who happens to be, just as an example, traveling out of state or out of the country, and that person still wants to participate, we want to make sure that option is available from a technological perspective.
I think I know the answer to this, but Sabina did ask if there's childcare provided during the meetings.
We do not provide childcare for board meetings.
Just wanted to make sure I had that correct. I've only been around since the virtual world was a thing. So we have about, I want to, again, be cognizant of everyone's time. So we have about 13 minutes to go. So if you have a burning question, please go ahead and submit it in the chat. What I will do right now, just to kind of, while we're waiting for any other questions to come in, is just share a couple more thoughts. Again, we kind of touched on this in the beginning, but in case maybe you got in late or needed a little recap, each village has its own process for becoming a candidate and for voting. So again, while CA tries to compile this information, we would highly encourage you to reach out to your village managers individually. They have all of the information on where they are in this process, when their certain deadlines are, etc. But most nominations for CA board, at least, require an application be submitted by mid-March, something to keep in mind. Again, we touched on this. Some of them do require signatures. Some of them give the option for written statements. Others do not. So it is really important that you touch base with your individual village manager and your village website to make sure that you were following the correct protocol. Elections are taking place for the most part on Saturday, April 24th. I forget which village off the top of my head, but one village is going to make Friday available as well, some hours on Friday, just to kind of spread things out a little bit more. Some villages are going all virtual. Some of them have absentee options as well as in-person options. So certainly, again, stay tuned with your individual village. That is going to be the best way to get involved from a voting and candidacy perspective. And again, keep in mind that village boards themselves have their own elections. You can also join, again, one of the CA advisory boards. I posted that link. I'm happy to post it again. And of course, we encourage you and you guys. I hope this group not only becomes a group that is interested in potentially running, but also advocates for the process. We would love for you all to take the energy and what you learned here today and to spread it to your friends, your family, your community, your churches, your book clubs, whatever else that may be. And make sure that people know that this is an opportunity to get involved at a lot of different levels. And one of those is as simple as casting your vote. So really, really appreciate everybody being here and to maybe carry on the good word into your own communities. We did have one more question from Philip. He asked, has CA ever considered incentives to encourage more individuals to run, such as free memberships, etc.? Milton and maybe Susan can speak to that as well.
When I'm assuming Philip is referring to compensation or whatever. For example, right now the board members are giving memberships, and I don't know what level. Susan, what is the membership that are granted to board members?
So the CA board member they can turn it down if they want, but they're offered a free CA Fit and Play membership, and they also receive a gift card for CA services and programs. And the point of that really is to help them know what CA provides and what they're actually representing and overseeing for the community.
But in response, with the exception of membership, there's no other compensation paid to CA board members.
Great. And again, that is really an incentive, I would say, more so to make sure we understand that our board understands the breadth of services that CA does provide to enhance the quality of life here in the Columbia community. I know I have learned a ton in my first few months with this organization of just the wide array of things that fall under our umbrella and what we offer and what the board needs to help. Any additional?
Okay, it's getting tough. The host is breaking up.
What was that?
You were breaking up there for a minute. One other thing is, it should be noted that the board previously had some additional benefits, and we cut them out because of the budget crisis. I think we had a family membership instead of an individual membership, and there were some other goodies too, and we got rid of that. In fact, I think we got rid of that gift card, didn't we, Andy?
So you voted, the board members chose to not take those, and you all agreed not to take them. So, and then for the gift card, the membership's still up to you. Some people continued to choose to take them, and some did not.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that, everybody, for breaking up there. I was just saying if there were any other questions, we're happy to stick around a few more minutes to answer them. By all means, I threw up my contact information up on this slide. Please take down my email. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can or forward them on to the appropriate people who can answer your questions. We just really appreciate, again, I cannot thank everybody enough for taking the last, 80 minutes or so to be with us and to learn a little bit more about what it takes to not only run for the board, but to get involved at a lot of different levels when it comes to your village and this community, because it is important. And, with that, I'll see if Milton has any parting thoughts to send people off with.
Once again, I just want to thank everyone, and please don't let your interest in with this Saturday at 11:30. If you have additional questions, please reach out to all of us, be included. I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you over the telephone, or we can set up a Google Meet conversation. But I'm just very impressed with the interest, and I hope that stays at this level.
Can I just add one more thing? We have a board meeting coming up on next Thursday, and if you want to get a taste of just what goes on, it's a virtual meeting. Tune in. We'd love to have you have a look at that. And Marlon, we have a village meeting coming up on Wednesday, the 10th of March. That's also a virtual meeting, and you're certainly invited to join in on that and see what happens at the village level. And also, if you'd like to talk, have any questions or anything about the village or about CA, please drop me a line and we can chat. I want to make sure that if I don't get reelected, whoever gets the spot is fully ready to hit the ground running. So let's work together if we have to.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Love making the connections. Dick, appreciate it. And again, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to chime in. I'll stick on here. Milton, Susan, Sheri, Lynn, if you don't mind sticking, and Andy, if you don't mind sticking on for just 5 more minutes in case somebody pops in with a question. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and please, please, please reach out and please get involved in whatever way you can. We appreciate it.
Okay, goodbye.